Hi, everyone. We've got a little something different for you today. Vanessa asked if she could hop back into the hosting role for a week to interview the journalist Anna Goldfarb. Since I'm really gracious, I am gallantly giving up the hosting couch this week so Vanessa can sit in it once more. I'll be back next week with another Should I question and another guest. But for today, take it away, Vanessa.
Hi, it's good to be back. I wanted to do this episode because I heard an interview with Anna Goldfarb that really blew me away. It was about her new book, Modern Friendship, and it had me immediately thinking about the real question. When I was the host, we got so many questions about friendship. Am I asking too much? Or are they asking too much? What do I do when I have a crush on my friend? Why are all my cross-gender friendships weird? Anna has done a lot of thinking about all of these questions and a lot of research about these questions, and I'm really excited to be talking to her today. I'm Vanessa Zoltan, and this is The Real Question. Hi, Anna.
Hello. Hi, Vanessa.
Thanks so much for coming on. We invited you on because we are obsessed with the topic of friendship, and I love the body of your work and the way that you think about it. So I am wondering if we could just start off talking about how do you think modernity, the moment that we are in right now, is creating the specific environments that we have that are making friendships hard? What is different about friendship now than 50 years ago?
That's a great question, Vanessa. So much is fundamentally different than our parents and grandparents. The first thing is we move around a lot more. We move around more than any generation in history.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild to think about, but it's almost like, of course, we're in a disparate moment. Like our lives are disparate.
Mm-hmm.
To ground this in a little bit of work, what I learned writing and reporting my book, Modern Friendship, is that we live in more of a spoke network now. So in this spoke network, we're in the middle. It's like a bicycle wheel. We're in the middle and we have these branches of cohorts, from childhood, from school, from jobs, job number 1, job number 2, job number 3, your neighborhood, your hobbies, and they only share common history with you, not with each other.
Yeah.
So that's what we're up against is we have all these people we can befriend, but it's much harder to keep those friendships solid when people move around so much and you don't have as much, you don't share the help of keeping your friendship active. We are individual cruise directors. We have our own little clipboards where we have to make a case for each individual relationship of why should we keep this one active or not. So that's like totally different than what your grandma did. Your grandma did not have to do that. Your grandma was probably like, I've known these ladies since I grew up with them. I went to school with them. She didn't have to try so hard.
That's so helpful and so important. And it's such a gift also, right? That we're like more mobile than ever. There's an expression that in Judaism, they don't let you live, they don't let you die. So like a close-knit community, it's really hard maybe to come out or to marry someone who's outside of who's expected of you. Or if someone is abusive, it's really hard to get away. And like when you're in the hospital, they don't let you die, right? Like they are there to support you. And it's just, I feel like so many of us moved for really good reasons, right? Like moved far away from our families and from those networks. And we know that those networks can be so oppressive. And your work is just so helpful in acknowledging like, well, here's the complications of that, right? And or we can look back on our grandparents and romanticize it and be like, yeah, also they were all drinking more and taking Valium. So, and things were a lot more segregated and right, like,
Yes, and you didn't have as much freedom. I mean, even just men and women working alongside one another is a
right,
recent phenomenon. Having friends of a different gender is a recent phenomenon. And I think we have a recency bias of we're like, oh, it must have always been like this. Like, wow,
right,
friendships in adulthood are way harder than I thought. And it's like, no, it's harder for us
right.
because of these reasons. It has not historically been this hard. You just didn't have as much choice.
You write about how people lose a lot of friends at 25. I'm wondering why you think that is. Why is 25 where like friends just drop off?
Friendships fall off a cliff after 25 and especially after 30. And part of the reason is, a study was done in 2020 and they found that people tend to make friendships for 5 reasons.
Ooh.
The first one is career. The second reason is mating. You want friends to go out with, party with, you're trying to meet other people, to date. Third reason is emotional support. Fourth reason is hobbies and passions, like that you're into the same stuff. And the last one is sociability, which basically means you want to be around people. You just sort of want to be a part of a thing. So it's interesting, after 25, if you and your friends aren't in the same career path, and career is a really high priority for you in your 20s, you might notice like that window might be closing of, well, we're actually not, my friend can't help me with my career in a compelling way. The second reason is mating. We usually tend to settle down. So you have one friend who has a partnership, a long-term partnership. They're not as interested in going out dancing and meeting people. So that's a window that's closing. So then you have these 3 windows left. And with emotional support, that's so big in our 20s. But when you have kids, giving emotional support to your friends may not be the highest priority for you. A study in 2014 found that we lose half of our friends every 7 years. That sounded like so sad to me. It was
Yeah.
like, why? Why are we? It's almost like this haircut that I don't want. Like, why are we losing all these friends? But when you look at it through these windows of, oh, well, my interests change. Like if hobbies and passions are a window of why we make friends, and I'm into marathoning, but I get injured, I'm not as interested in running, that'll impact who you seek out and why.
Yeah.
So it's really just life is busy and complicated and unpredictable, but we make decisions in predictable ways. Like we all have the same set of reasons why we're looking for friends. Also, this is important to know because one of the questions I had is, well, why would someone want me as their friend? What am I bringing to the table? And when you understand why people make friends, then you can understand why certain friendships persist and others have peeled away or buckled. That's my hope.
I think people are friends with me because I'm so fun.
We love fun. We definitely love fun.
I definitely became friends with my now good friend Matt because he's such a good cook. I was like, oh, you live far away, but I'll come visit because the food is so good.
Well, it was very compelling to you. You're like, I'm going to keep this friendship active
Yes.
because this friendship is very compelling to me. But at the same time, what friendships aren't as compelling to you? Like, why haven't you reached out to certain friends?
Yeah.
One question I was obsessed with was everybody wants to make more friends. How do I meet new friends? And I'm like, girl, your phone is full of friends that you already have. What do you think these magical new people are going to bring? Like,
go to the tailor and have that shirt refitted. You don't need to buy a new one. Yeah.
It's very much like the new shiny of, well, I want a new friend. It's like, well, can you keep the ones you have? What's going on with them?
I find that people don't do that. I meet with a lot of people one-on-one in chaplaincy, and a lot of what people are talking to me about is their loneliness. And I think the reason that people don't go back to old friends is because their old friends have hurt and disappointed them. And like the thing I'm trying to normalize is like that we all hurt and disappoint each other. Like that's not actually a crime. Like that's part of being in a loving and mutual relationship is that we hurt and disappoint each other. But I understand, right? Like you don't want to go back to the old friend because you've hurt them. You've embarrassed yourself in front of them. You've reached out one too many times. it feels like the potential for a fresh start with new friends. But yeah, I agree with you. I just think that our tolerance for discomfort is understandably pretty low. And so we would rather go for the shiny new thing and hope for a fresh start than have to even just have to tell someone you've really hurt my feelings, right? Because what if they don't take it seriously? What if they think that you're being too needy? When the ties that bind aren't the running club, the job, the whatever, it can be really hard to be vulnerable.
I agree with you. I do think there's a gap in our knowledge of how do we handle this. We do not have adequate role models. You can't be like, hey, grandma, how did you handle it when you were left out of the group chat?
Right.
Like, your grandma wasn't dealing with that.
Right.
How does our family deal with this? There's no religion guidance of like, well, who can I ask of how to handle it? You know, when you see your friend on Instagram and then you get a ping of sadness or hurt, or you generate a story about what you're seeing.
Yeah.
As our brains tend to do when there's an absence of information, we can generate stories that are more likely to reflect our own insecurities than the truth.
Yeah.
So we are definitely fighting like an existential battle here of how do I make sense of what I'm seeing? Because we have so much more information than any point in history.
Yep. You talk in your book about wholehearted friendships. I'm wondering if you could tell us what that is.
Yeah, I wanted a word to describe the friendships that I yearned for. And I couldn't think of a good word. Like what word describes the perfect friendship? And the word wholehearted means dedicated, committed, and enthusiastic. And I'm like, that's it. Those are the kinds of friendships I want. So I created a paradigm of how do you close the gap between the kind of friendships you want and the friendships you actually have. So wholehearted friendship is the paradigm I designed based around time. A man named Jeffrey H. Hall, he's a professor of communication at University of Kansas. He did a study and he found out that it takes on average 200 hours of shared time to go from stranger to like best friend. 200 hours. So how do we think of this time? And I broke it down into 3 components. Desire, who you yearn to spend your time with. Diligence, who you prioritize spending your time with. And delight, who you actually enjoy spending your time with. So this is the alchemy of friendship. It is, why do you miss one friend over another? And I learned it's because every friendship needs an about. And the about needs to be clear and compelling to both people. That's what keeps a friendship active.
Can you give an example of an about?
Oh my gosh, yes. Like we just talked about the 5 reasons people seek out friends. Those are all magnificent abouts. Career. Why do we get together? Because we're both in the same field and we care about this. We care about our careers. Why do we get together? Well, emotional support. Like I know my friend's such a great listener and she cares about me so deeply. Those are all abouts, is why we make friends. You need an about to keep a friendship active. When you notice a friendship drifting, it's because the about is either changed or it's outdated or it's absent. We really have no reason to get together at the moment. And that's okay. But this is how people operate. It's the desire. It's the gas in their friendship car of you need a reason to keep a friendship moving forward, to say no to other things on their plate, to spend time with you.
Yeah.
So it's just really exciting to see a method to them. Like there's a pattern here. There's a logic here. This isn't random. It really starts with that about of why do we keep our friendship active? Is it clear? Is it compelling? And the reason is outside of you. It's something you both are interested in independently and then connect on and it grows from there. So I really hope this information gives people peace of mind of It's not so personal. It's not something you're doing or not doing. This is the deal with friendship. It's outside of you, something you guys are so excited to connect over, talk about, share, support. That's what makes friendship magical.
So if we're lonely and we're looking at our phone and scrolling through and being like, God, I really miss Jack. I just really miss them. And we don't hit these 5 things. What do you recommend? Do you recommend being like, okay, Jack really likes going to the movies. What if I offer to start a movie club with them? What do you recommend sort of as the opening move to potentially reconnect with someone?
Girl, you're on track. It's
Ugh.
negotiating. What is important to you right now? How can I help?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, isn't that an irresistible thing to hear from someone? You're like, I would love to learn coding. I would love to move my body more. I'd love to check out more Mexican restaurants. Like,
Yeah.
it's very understandable to be focused on yourself. I don't know how to say it without sounding
Yeah.
judgy. Like, overly focused on yourself of I want people to go out and have a glass of wine with. I want people to go see, the Oscar movies with. I want this. But it's really about these other people. What do they want? What
Right.
do they want to do that you can help them with? That's a narrative we don't see much in pop culture. We see main characters in pop culture. We see people that have sidekicks and we root for the hero. But friendship requires us to be the sidekick to someone else.
Yeah.
And that's a very different orientation than what most people think friendship is.
What you said made me think of 2 things. One is that we do just have this purity mindset where we're like, well, I don't want them to like me because I bike with them. I want them to like me for me. I want it to be pure. And I think that is false. I think that every friendship I have, there are things that we enjoy doing together or the friendship falls apart. Like we have a shared interest, an activity, something. But I also know that there are people who are like, I always show up for them and they never show up for me. What do you say to that?
Well, I would encourage them to investigate, are you being authentic with your needs, wants, and availability? Because if it's not reciprocal, if you're not feeling that same level of commitment, yes, that's something to pay attention to. But I would check in and am I being honest with how this friendship, have I alerted my friend to this? Have I voiced this? Your friend might be thinking, oh, this is great. This is something they're comfortable with. We aren't given any models of how friends negotiate a friendship to say, hey, I feel like I'm always there for you. Talk to me about this.
Yeah.
I think people, I almost said women, like most people, I don't think anyone's great with this, shy away from conflict or they don't want to rock the boat, especially women. We've been conditioned to not be too demanding or come off as needy. And my hope is that by understanding the mechanics of friendship, you will feel more empowered to say, well, what is the about of our friendship? Is it clear? Is it compelling? Okay, it's not very compelling to me. I usually just help her with stuff she cares about. She's not that interested in me. Okay, this isn't working for me. What do I want to do? Should I shuffle her to an outer orbit? Should I negotiate and say, should I bring it up? Those are all things we can do. I mean, part of the burden of modern friendship is that friendships are so easy to shed.
Yeah.
It's just a lot more freedom. It's like that beauty and the burden of all this freedom of, do I want to be spending my time with this person? And sometimes it's best to dial it back or to dial back the intensity. And sometimes we have friends that we wouldn't befriend today if we had all the information. Right. We make a lot of these friendships when we're younger, and it doesn't always make sense to keep a friendship as close as you get older and your priorities shift. Yeah. So I'm hoping people hear that message too. Like, it's a validating message of nothing's wrong with you. It's just, what is the reason for this friendship to be active? Is it clear? Is it compelling? And if not, you can either negotiate and say, hey, this isn't working for me. What if we switched from going to happy hour to like walks or get coffee?
Yeah.
Like, that's actually more aligned with where I am right now.
Yeah.
A lot of these shifts are normal, and it's about learning how to surf the wave, not be pulled under the wave, which is a phrase I saw at Home Goods, just to be clear.
I would love to hear you talk more about this idea of like friendship orbits. Can you just talk to me about what you mean about this? I know you have a great metaphor in your book that I had heard outside of your book. So like your ripples are already outside. But if you could talk about orbits and this metaphor that you have around a bathtub, please.
Yes. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this knowledge because it's so freeing. This is based on Robin Dunbar's research. He's a British anthropologist. And I rebranded his model to include water features. I really wanted to highlight how fluid our social circles are. The innermost tier I call the bathtub, and that's because there's not much room in there. And Dunbar found that for men, it's usually one person in their most intimate tier, and it's usually a woman, their significant other. But for women, interestingly, it's two people in their bathtub. It's their significant other and their best friend. So that's the bathtub. The next most intimate tier I call the jacuzzi, and that's 3 to 5 people. That's what Dunbar calls your support tier. These people play very important roles in your life, and you play important roles in their life as well. My book will help you identify if you want to learn more information about that. And then the next tier I call the swimming pool, and that's the 10 to 15 people you might go on double dates with. Maybe they're your favorite coworkers. They know some intimate details about your life, but they're not like your bestie that knows, basically everything about you.
Right.
There's a few more tiers. The next one is I call the beach bonfire. That's 50 people. That's like if you had a milestone birthday, who would you invite to a big birthday party? And then the last one I call the water park. That's 150 people. Dunbar calls them the weddings and funerals group. And that's basically it. Like that's the gig. If you have 3 to 5 outstanding friendships in your jacuzzi tier, like you're killing it. Studies show happiness in midlife women, one of the biggest factors is having 3 to 5 very close friendships where people identify you as their best friend. It's not just that you say, these are my friends. They identify you as being integral to their life too. And that's the gig. We aren't designed to keep dozens and dozens of connections across our life that we've ever met. That's why social friendships, the whole thing feels so overwhelming. A lot of us, when we think of our best friendships, the best time we've had in friendships, most of us think to when we're younger and you didn't have that many people to keep up with. You had a few friends in high school, a few friends in college. You just focused on them and that was enough. You were happy. But then after 25, you meet so many more people and you have so many more connections you're trying to keep up. And that's when you start to feel burnt out, adrift, unsatisfied.
Yeah. And Instagram keeps the people who are at the farther reaches sort of in front of mind. You're like, oh, shoot, I am not keeping in touch with that person the way that I should. It just feels more in your face. Something that often frustrates people is the ambiguity of friendships, this exact fluidity that you're talking about. And there are unspoken rules, and I don't know which rule I've broken, and I don't know how to have a productive conflict. And I'm wondering, should people treat their friendships more like romantic relationships where you discuss your expectations, discuss what am I to you? This is what you are to me. Do you encourage people just like sort of sit down and talk about their friendships? Or are you like, no, embrace the fluidity. That's intense and weird. Jacuzzi to pool and back, and that's fine.
I think it's such a gift to give your friends certainty.
Yeah.
And that is what we're going for because uncertainty creates anxiety.
Yeah.
I opened the book talking about how I lost my dad to COVID. And I had been reporting on friendships for years before then, mostly for the New York Times. But it was seeing him and his apprehension and his anxiety and pain about reconnecting with an old friend that made me realize these issues could not be more urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot tell you how transformative it has been to remove uncertainty from friends, not just in my jacuzzi, also in my swimming pool, to say, I love our friendship. You are so special to me. I love how intelligent, how deeply caring you are. Like, I see that in you. And I just really value what you bring to my life. And that gives people permission to invest in the friendship with you. When they know that you're in it and you're committed, that's the beautiful result. And all of my friendships have flourished. The ones that I've sat down and explained, even my friends I don't get to see very much, and say,
Yeah.
listen, I know that you wish we could spend more time together right now. I do too. Like, I do too. I think about
Right.
you all the time. I love you, and my door is always open for you. So
Yeah.
it's not even just the most immediate jacuzzi friends. There is nothing more important than taking the time, making the date, saying, I want to see you because,
Yep.
and giving people a reason to invest in your friendship.
Yeah, I love that. So, and I've talked openly on the podcast about my ambivalence about this, but I recently broke up with a very long-standing friend, and I'm wondering what you think about friend breakups. Do you let them float out to sea? Do you talk to them?
You know, it could be helpful to think of them as friendship pauses and not so final, because we honestly don't know. Like, we don't know where things are going to go. We don't know where our lives are going to go. I mean, unless there's a catastrophic betrayal that's like, this friendship is no longer viable, which can happen and does happen.
And I would argue happened for me. So go ahead.
Yes, so it does happen. And the reason why these kinds of friendships are so painful is usually because this friend played a very important role for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you're grieving losing that role, that person who played that role.
Yeah.
I mean, we shed friendships all the time. I pull away from friends left and right all the time, and it's not always a sad thing. It's more just, well, there's no reason to keep it active. But with a friendship breakup, it's embarrassing, it's painful. There isn't a script for it. You know, with a romantic breakup, it's like, okay, here's the ice cream, here's the Kleenex, here's your girls, but you don't get that kind of support and understanding with a friendship breakup. It's usually very just internalized and alone. And
Yeah.
it's very painful. But my hope is that by reading books like mine and you understand the roles that your friends play for you, you can at least understand this is why this friendship is so painful. She was my companion. She was my collaborator. She was my energizer. Like, this was the role. And by naming it, it can help contain the hurt.
Yeah.
Listen, friendship breakups are culturally new. You know, like, this is culturally new. So just be gentle with yourself. If you don't know how to perfectly manage these things, they're very emotional, they're very heightened. Just practice self-compassion. It's really hard.
My last question for you is, if you are lonely, what advice do you give to people?
I think if you're lonely, the best thing you can do is turn down the volume on thoughts like, why aren't people doing more for me? And turn up the volume on, what can I do to help out my favorite people right now? And I think we live in a culture that's so self-obsessed, self-care. What do I feel like? What do I need? What do I feel like? What do I need? And it can be a relief to just, you know what? Let's put that aside. How are my friends doing? Who's struggling right now? You know, maybe I can help. And that will make you feel meaning.
Yeah.
Loneliness is the absence of meaning. It's, does anyone even care? Does my friendship even matter to my friends? But
Yeah.
when you have meaning, when you say, of course they care, and they care because, you know, I help them with things that they care about, then you have that meaning, and it will really help you feel more connected.
Yeah. I love that advice. Also, you know, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is being proven to be so effective for self-confidence, right? That, like, you actually can just become more self-confident. And that's one of the things that you can do. And there's just evidence that shows when you're depressed, volunteering makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Reaching out often makes you feel better. And it feels counterintuitive, right? Like, I'm sad. Why should I try to make someone else happy? But it's because it works. It's just a positive feedback loop. Anna, thank you so much. I feel like so much of this is so opaque, and you, just by sort of teasing it apart and naming things, I do think is really empowering. And I hope that our listeners really take to heart how effective these strategies are. So thank you for all of this work.
Thank you for saying that, Vanessa. And I really deeply care about this. Like, you can tell my passion. Like, I'm obsessed with this. I'm on your side. Like, I want you guys to just put the heavy backpack down of like, listen, doesn't have to be something fraught that you carry forever. Like, we can figure this out and move forward and start enjoying these delicious relationships.
Absolutely.
This has been The Real Question. Our show is funded through our Patreon at patreon.com/realquestionpod. If you're a regular listener, we would love your support. There are so many fun perks at Patreon. Come check them out. Another way you can support this show is by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Real Question Pod. We are always looking for more guests. Go to our website, realquestionpod.com, and submit to our form. I would love to see what your questions are, and I would love to have conversations with you right here on the show. We love to shout out our BFF tier patrons, Renee Underhill, Becky Boo, Jenny Cruz, and Amanda Schramm. We are a Not Sorry production. Our executive producer is Vanessa Zoltan. We are edited and produced by Ariana Nettleman. Music is by Nick Bowl, and we are distributed by Acast. Support for this show comes from the Fetzer Institute. And thank you, as always, to our wonderful team, Julia Argy, Nikki Zoltan, AJ Yaramas, Anissa Ahmed, Danny Langley, Courtney Brown, Casper Turkile, and Stephanie Paulsell. We'll see you all next week.